is he? All right. Brogan, Morton, our comedian, usually quite stoic and boring, but he's going to put it on today.
How's it going, everybody? So, before I start, Lewis made a point of thanking everybody else for what a great job they did in making this a successful show. But I also want to show a little appreciation to Lewis, because Lewis has been the driving force behind this whole thing. And he has put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this. So, if he hadn't put in all this work, you would have never had to hear him sing. So you can be the judge. So Lewis he's a real Renaissance man. You can see that he can sing. He can sing-ish. He can perform comedy. But I also know him as a coworker, and he is just the consummate professional here. Lewis is actually the quality manager here. And if you don't know what that means, it means he's this guy who gets really excited about value stream maps and flow diagrams. And when I say excited, like, dude gets really excited about that sort of thing. Which can make for some incredibly uncomfortable meetings. Lewis, you can thank me about the generous size of the censor bar later. So as you can tell, this is not just going to be me sitting up here and doing stand-up. It's what I did last year, and this year I just got kind of down to the wire a couple weeks ago, and I wasn't feeling like I was prepared. I didn't feel like I was going to be able to pull it off. So I was getting really nervous. So I went and I talked to Lewis, and I said, Lewis, exactly how mandatory is my act to the whole show? And he said, don't worry about it. You're getting too nervous. You're overthinking this. All I need from you is 5 minutes of mediocre comedy. I said, thanks, coach. Great. So that night, when I was crying into my pillow, my wife noticed the gentle weeping, and she came over and she says, what's wrong? I said, Lewis still needs me to do 5 minutes of mediocre comedy. She said, that's okay, sweetie. Let me put it into perspective. That's only 3 more minutes of mediocrity than you usually give me. All right. Which leads me to the name of my program, 3 More Minutes of Mediocrity. So, I had a name, but I still didn't have any material. And so I was sitting on my couch, and I was trying to figure out what to do, and I was flipping through some old pictures, and I got this really mediocre idea. I said, I'm going to take these pictures, and I'm going to turn them into a comedy routine. So these are all going to be pictures that are on my iPhone. And it's going to be kind of a Dimitri Martin meets Tosh.0, I think is the best way. A little less vulgar, I think. But so, all these pictures I think were taken in approximately about the last year with my iPhone. And so first, I would encourage you to go through this exercise. Just go through some of this stuff, because you end up learning a lot about yourself. Like the first thing I learned is I'm an unbelievable narcissist. Honestly. Which is surprising coming from a guy talking in front of 80 people, garnering attention. I know, but I mean, so it just ungodly amounts of selfies. And not the selfies you take with like friends in the picture either, just like literally pictures of yourself. Oh, yeah. So there's the first thing I learned about myself. And as you might be able to tell from some of these selfie pictures, I am not I'm not one for grooming. I just have a hard time finding the time for it. But when I take the time and I do it right, there's some amazing results. Amazing. I'm gonna spare you the Brazilian waxing results. I'm gonna keep those to myself. Looks like the anesthetist was holding up a dead rat. I also was looking through, and I ate a lot of different kinds of food this year, but if you looked at my iPhone, the only thing you would find is burgers and barbecue for some reason. I don't really know why. And maybe you can tell from the pictures, but my favorite part of barbecue is the baby back ribs. Just absolutely love baby back ribs. Yeah, I know, right? I mean, Lewis made a joke last year about running over a 2-year-old in a car, so I figured eating a baby joke, what the heck? But the most disturbing thing, I think, that I found about all the pictures on my phone was the ungodly number of booze. Seriously, I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot of pictures of beers and whiskey. More the pictures of booze than of my wife. And just slightly more than the number of dick pics on there. But to be fair, it was pictures of Lewis in meetings, so that's... But when I realized I really had a problem is when I went to my my Google Photos app, and it started confusing booze with the rest of my family. I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. I've been kind of talking in general, now I'm going to get into some specifics. A little bit about my year. I turned 40 this year, which was obviously a big step. I have no jokes about that because I'm just trying to maintain the delusion it doesn't really mean that much. So thank you for humoring me on that. But in addition to turning 40, I also had my 13th wedding anniversary. Wait, I'm not sure how that picture got. What that has to do with anything. That last picture was a lie. I love my family. I love my wife. That is my wife, Jen, and my 2 kids, Sophie and Keller. And the reason I show them here is, so when you see the rest of the pictures, you don't just think I'm some creeper who takes pictures of random kids and makes jokes about them. They really exist. So first lesson I learned was from my kids this year, which is sometimes it's important to let your kids know that really they have to physically fight for who is daddy's favorite. Honestly, it's you know, you go to a vacant lot, you put them up on a couple stumps, and you just let them go at it. You know, if you have any better ideas, you can let me know, but I feel like it's a pretty good one. I just want to make it clear that I don't actually support kid-on-kid violence. Oh good, people are gonna goat joke. I was like, goat joke's 50-50, but they know it's a kid. I don't know. I'm gonna throw it in there. Another lesson I learned is that just because you're in the backyard trying to teach your daughter how to shoot her bow and arrow, it does not absolve you of the responsibility of watching your 6-year-old when there's a fire present. So, that's my son Keller, and you may notice there's actually some crosshatch burns on there. So he put the cover, the ash cover that comes right off the fire thing, and he was on the fire. I said, "Hey buddy, probably not a good idea. It's gonna get really hot. Could you take it off there?" He said, "Sure, I'll do that." So he got the poker and he took it off, and then he grabbed it and he put it up to his lips to see if Daddy was right, and it was hot. Why in the world he would put one of the most sensitive parts of his body on the thing to test it himself? I'm just glad he had his pants on. Another lesson I learned out of this is when your wife comes home and she asks why your son has been burned in the face, you should not use the term 3 beers deep. It does not help the situation. The most important lesson of baseball is to always know where the bat and balls are. There are some perverted chocolatiers out there. Confidence is not a state of being, it's an attitude. Dog people are crazy. Only slightly less crazy than cat people. This is a real thing. It's called a catio, and I'm not joking you. It's a portmanteau of cat and patio. But taking the cake is horse people. That is literally an aircraft for horses. 100% real thing. I just don't understand how they get them to go up the ladder. I mean, how do you get a horse up there? You can always class up a sleeveless shirt by wearing a belt. Another little pro tip from me to you. Learn that one on Queer Eye. No one likes a neck beard. This one's gonna take a minute. This is a flight a month and a half ago I took, and so that's the little center divider that actually goes down and separates the two seats. But I did learn a lesson from this. Again, this is all about lessons. I learned that I'm an optimist because when I look at that picture, I don't see the seat as half empty. I see it as half full. And last, but not least, of your 5 minutes of mediocrity, as my daughter and I are wearing our matching solar system t-shirts. Uranus never stops being funny. Thank you all for listening and supporting United Way.
Solid mediocrity.